going to get there is if we do things together.
And I appreciate the fact that he mentioned that they tried to stay objective to the entire county and avoid taking a look specifically at this piece of property. That being said, let's talk about this specific piece of property. That being that it's a 35-acre parcel that is a waterfront parcel to all of the flood irrigation waters for the Rhodes Road, Andrew Lane, Steamboat Creek, all the way to Damani Ranch area of town. So that's an immediate impact to our water source. And in light of the recent floods that we've had, and floods that we've had for the last 4 decades, that piece of property is not only in the 100-year floodplain, but within the 10-year floodplain, much of that property. And it's all very soft meadow grass land that would have to be drastically changed, I think, to be able to support heavy equipment and a rock yard as is proposed a use of color rock. And if you guys all know what that looks like. I moved out there 4 years ago. It took me 10 years to purchase that home out there. My wife and I knew our entire adult life that that's where we wanted to live. And we wanted to live there for a specific reason, because it was larger, rural, sort of country lane homes that were out there on their own and that had a distinguished and slowly progressing growth rate and growth plan, and a well-established growth plan. And this violates all of that. And it violates all of that for all of these people standing behind me. This piece of property is under the county's minimum 40-acre size, and we've already established that. It's utilizing right now a residential bridge and a road that is by default too narrow to establish a 2-lane divider. It's in fact too narrow for the county roads department to put that divider on, and we're already having speeding issues on that road. In light of the recent and foreseeable floods, this place has a potential for fertilizers, non-native soils, potential hazmat materials to be dispersed downstream and possibly impacting county homeowners and water systems downstream from the area. I'll abbreviate. So finally, it's requested unanimously by myself and the residents of the Andrew Lane and Rhodes Road area that you see behind me to deny the proposed amendment and suggest an alternate location for Mr. Wiley that is both more ecologically practical and consistent with the residents and constituents of your Washoe County. And that goes together with your mission statement up there to provide a safe and secure and healthy community. Thank you for your time.
Next is Carol Huffer, followed by Scott Jordan.
Would you state your name and address, please?
My name is Carol Huffer, and I live at 300 Andrew Lane. And I will be brief, as former people have stated the needs. This being a general for the whole county, I understand, but the person submitting this, it looks like a backdoor way in for him to get in where we wouldn't know what was going on. And we have had enough problems there, and you're dealing also with wild horses in that area, and they do go all the way to 395 in that area. But we do have the wind and all the other stuff. I am not adjacent to his property, so I am not directly affected, but I find this can be a traffic hazard for Andrew Lane, big time, for all the things that go on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Scott Jordan, followed by Marcy Jordan.
Would you please state your name and address?
Yes. I'm Scott Jordan. I live at 605 Chance Lane at the corner of Chance Lane and Rhodes Road in Steamboat Valley. I'm opposed to this proposed modification of the Development Code. I have to start by saying that I have to admire Mr. Willie's strategic decision to seek what he's seeking by way of a countywide amendment rather than something specific for his property. One of the consequences of that is that he didn't have to give his neighbors any notice of what he was doing. And if we weren't here the last time you addressed this request, it's because none of us got any notice of it. So please take
All right.
that into
Michelle, you ready? All right.
So
Good evening and welcome to the Reno City Planning Commission Wednesday, May 3rd meeting. And we will begin this evening with our Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Snyder, will you lead us this evening?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Commission Chairman Barnes and members of the Commission.
Thank you.
I'm a lifelong
Michelle, can I have a roll call,
resident of
please?
Steamboat Valley, and I'm familiar with all development that has
Mark
occurred.
Johnson,
Here.
Ed Hawkins,
Here.
Paul Olivas,
Here.
Charles Reno,
Here.
Troy Schneider,
Here.
Kevin Weisky,
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. I don't have any general public comment cards, but if anyone wishes to make a public comment, this would be the time. Michelle, do you have any cards?
No, I do not.
Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comment, and we will move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Commissioners looking for a motion on the April 5th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Commissioner Johnson.
second.
Okay. You got you on that one, Commissioner Weisky. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? No?
Abstain? Yeah. Commissioner Schneider.
City Council liaison reports, item 5. Councilwoman Breckus is here this evening. Welcome.
Sale of rock and stone not be allowed. That was decided back in 1997. There's more to read. I'll try to get through more.
Quarter. For the record, Jenny Breckus, City Council Liaison. Just wanted to come and do my quarterly update to you on issues and see if you had any questions for me. It was a busy first quarter of the year with all the weather-related situation in all of our different wards. Some wards got hit harder than others, and so it was keeping some of us council members, busier than others. But it was really a full-fledged effort through really our great staff doing such a hard work with all of our regional partners and a lot of constituent outreach too at our level. And then, of course, we just ended up a round of master plan input meetings. I don't know, you all had a special workshop on the citywide policies, right?
Coming up next week.
Oh, is it Monday? That's right. Okay, great. Yeah, I just saw that agenda posted last night. So, great. For me, and I'll share with you, I'm starting to think in the master plan in terms of implementation. And I would encourage you all, as you go through your next several months with some of these cases, is start to think about what would be the applicability of policies to, the decisions before us, and talked with the consultants about maybe starting to throw up a few cases and see how they relate to some of the policies, because every one of your case has a master plan analysis. It's the finding you meet, and so I think it would even be a great practice to start to look at the master plan. Maybe not, you're not going to rely on those policies, but think about it. They apply to the decisions coming forward to you. I know that's how I'm looking at it in the issues coming before me. So very excited about that along master plan implementation, and one of the busy issues dealing with the council right now is the budget. Looking at a flat budget, the council's, and really it's not flat because our costs go up. So, that's not flat. We got to absorb the costs, which is a challenge enough, but bring on what we call enhancements in our budget world is very tough. We had a long meeting yesterday and really trying to figure out a way to bring on 6 more police officers. And that's a challenge even for us. So that's the tough spot we're in. But happy to report that an item that I have been advocating for several years is going to make it in from the building enterprise fees, and that is $150,000 to do the zoning code. So that's master plan implementation is code work next year that'll start, and probably see a code diagnostic by the fall, pointing out all of our warts on the code, and I'm very excited about that because we know how much we use it. You all use it, our staff uses it. It's an encumbrance to our development. I think it's got some hazards there that are not allowing us to meet our, housing affordability objectives. So it's going to be a very exciting next phase to roll into, and that's going to be in the budget and its master plan implementation. The downtown plan, I think that we adopted that. That effort was somewhat segregated from from you a little bit more than, and I was okay with it to some degree because it had a lot of operational issues, budgetary issues. It's not a master plan element, but hopefully you've all been briefed on it and had presentations as it proceeded. And I would expect that at some point there will be some rollout that would involve the Planning Commission. And certainly, because a lot of it's the redevelopment agency, you don't sit as the redevelopment agency advisory board. We have another board there, so I think they were more involved. So that's a justification for why the Planning Commission wasn't as involved. It really doesn't work into your statutory framework. But that's kept us busy. The budget's keeping us busy, and then, of course, the legislative session keeps us busy, too, focusing on what's going down in Carson City. Few things of interest to you maybe going on in Carson City. It's always of interest what's going on in NRS 278. Those are our planning and zoning statutes. And there was an early bill going on that kind of died, sponsored by the county commission to amend the composition of our regional governing body, the TMRPA, and that one is not going to go into effect. And I think but it did raise a number of issues that I think are front and center now as we tee up to the regional plan update. And the budget does include a city council appropriation, or city appropriation, I think of about $35,000, which I would presume is matched by the other jurisdictions. And frankly, I think the Airport Authority and the RTC, and I think the RTC is coming in, should also pull in, because there's going to be an effort to get the regional plan done by a consultant. TMRPA is a very small organization, and we need to have that resource come into them. So I'm very excited about that starting to kick off in the next year. And then there was another bill that I wasn't crazy about. It touches 278. It came out of the South. It was a real feel-good bill that a lot of people were promoting that encouraged urban agriculture zoning districts, which one we have authority to do anyway. We can set up our zoning districts however we want. The pink flower pot zoning district, you could do that. So it didn't seem to be anything more than an effort for some people to go to Carson City and explain how they're trying to produce urban farming in Clark County, which is a great thing. We've got a lot of it going on here in Reno. We've already amended our zoning code there, but I had a problem with it because it gums up a very workaday part of the statutes that says this is what you put in your master plan. And then it also had some cumbersome, it said, these are the elements that you could have in your master plan, but then if you do put this urban agriculture element in your master plan, you have to go inventory all this land. So it had a weird enabling and prescriptive provision and gummed up a body of statute that is very disjointed anyway. The Nevada statute relating to planning and zoning is really something that was developed in the 30s and 40s, and we've just been piecemealing it ever since. And that's why sometimes you all or our attorneys stumble up against, well, what is the meaning of this master plan provision or so on. So I always try and want to be very careful with that, but it seems to be flying through. Anyway, we'll try it, and I think, it's onus of the planning community to inform those who can make changes in state law about what the implications are. It's like an attorney's rule of procedures, civil procedure, just being amended with some non-necessary work. So anyway, that's an analogy. What else is going on? Council hasn't had a lot of appeals lately. We've been a little quiet on that. Would you agree, Ms. Hanson? Thank you. We had a site plan one that kind of lived through a few iterations but went away. I don't think we have anything really on the docket. We see annexations, we see abandonments. Those skip you. Not in agreement with that, but they do skip you. And we've got a couple of those coming forward. And then, of course, we've got a billboard discussion coming back to us June 9th? June 9th, for kind of bigger, broader city council policy direction. We did a text amendment, the Wells neighborhood parking standards, and we also did a minor text amendment to zoning. Oh, and we also initiated a text amendment in the Mortensen area. So those are what's coming through the code. Kind of a lot of big picture stuff, not any specific projects to report on. And I'll answer any questions y'all have for me.
All right, thanks very much.
Okay.
Commissioners, questions for Councilwoman Breckus?
Okay.
All right.
Oh, great. Well, one question. Those of you who are at TMRPA, are you starting to gear up on what's going on there on the regional plan update? Have you?
So this is Commissioner Gower. We've had, in our latest meetings, we've had some feedback on survey results from commissioners, and they have a list of stakeholders.
Okay.
Community stakeholders that have taken the survey, kind of their knowledge of TMRPA and regional planning in general. So that's kind of
Okay.
we're phasing into it, I think, is the best way to put it.
Okay, issues identification. Great. Well, I think just like you're the game on our master plan, you'll be the game on the regional plan setup. So have a good meeting tonight, next week, and we'll see you in the third quarter.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I bought my house about 20
All right, moving on to our next item. We are fortunate to have Lynn Barker here this evening to talk to us about City of Reno Sustainability Plan.
Thank you. Lynn Barker for the record. Thank you for having me here today. Do I just, there we go. So I'm going to be talking to you, just giving you a progress report. I think I came here probably about maybe a year ago before the Planning Commission to talk about what I was doing. I was just getting started with the city. And so I'm going to touch on a number of different things: our greenhouse gas inventory, green building in our marketplace, energy efficiency, climate resilience, sustainability and climate action plan, and then our STAR Communities performance benchmark. So as you recall, our mayor and city council joined, at the time it was called the Compact of Mayors. It was a global coalition of communities, cities, mayors that have committed to reducing climate pollution. That was formed from the UN, and the European Union also had a very similar program called the Covenant of Mayors, and so they have joined, and now are calling themselves the Global Covenant of Mayors, and so we are a member of that, so we're one of over 7,000 cities that are committed to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and taking action on climate adaptation as well. That commitment has required us to do a number of things. After the commitment, we were required to conduct a greenhouse gas inventory, to identify our climate-related risks, and to report on a global platform. And the global platform does two things for the community. One is it expresses to, this platform the CDP platform is used by the investment industry, so about 822 investors, institutional investors, take a look at it. And so if they're taking a look at whether or not to invest in a community, if there's a community that is working on climate change issues or climate adaptation issues, it signals to them that the level of risk is lower than a community that perhaps is not addressing these issues. The phase 3 is to establish targets, and then the phase 4 is to develop a climate action plan, which within 3 years of making the commitment. So we did conduct a greenhouse gas inventory. We had a lot of partners in helping us gather the data. It's a very data-intensive endeavor. We also worked with UNR, a professor and an undergraduate student who helped us develop the report and assess the data, and an intern of mine. So there was a team of 4 of us that were working on it, but we had many of the regional organizations helping us with the data that they collect for our community. Everything from, TEM1, NV Energy, to the county and the health district, and many others. And I'm very grateful for the help that we did get from everybody. So this chart shows how many metric tons. That might mean not much to anybody, so I put it in perspective. You see the dark blue bar is where Reno's at in terms of metric tons per capita, annual metric tons per capita for our community, and you can see that we're doing pretty well compared to many communities and compared to the average community in the U.S., which is around 21 tons. So a little less than twice as much as what we are. One of the reasons our community has lower emissions is that we don't have a lot of heavy industry, and our portfolio of energy in the state is fairly clean compared to many other states that are still relying on coal-burning power plants and other sources of energy. So that does put us in a little bit better position when we take a look at what our targets are for reducing emissions. And so I'll talk about that in just a moment. The other thing that we are tasked to do is to assess our climate-related risks, prioritize those risks, create a resilience plan, and also address vulnerable populations related to some of those risks. There has been some work done in this community prior to my getting here on taking a look at climate-related risks. Washoe County with DRI and UNR and many other partners conducted a resilience study for our community, and it's actually a pretty good document that identifies the main risks, which are listed here, and they have some recommendations on how to address those risks. One of the issues with the study is a lot of the information was used from the Southwest Climate Assessment, so that's a national, federally funded assessment. So it's regionalized for the Southwest region. There's been a lot of research at DRI and UNR that's really trying to take a look at localized impacts, and that's more recent data. So we would like to take the study and expand on it and create a resilience plan. That work is very science-based. I'm not a scientist. It's not work that I'm all that, don't have the expertise to do. And the city doesn't really have the funding to do it. And so we were invited to participate in a program that the American Geophysical Union hosts called the Thriving Earth Exchange, where they pair communities with scientists that will do the work for us pro bono. And we have identified 2 scientists that have volunteered to do that work and bring together a group of stakeholders across our community, including our researchers in this area at UNR and DRI, and help us take that study that was done in 2014 and take it to the next level and create a resilience plan for our community. And that work is getting underway, and that's a very generous offer of 2 scientists to volunteer to do that level intensity of work for our community. So really excited about starting that work. So target setting. The typical or most common target is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. That is a part of the Kyoto Treaty. It's a global goal in terms of emission reduction so that we meet our goal for limiting the increase in average global temperatures. There are some new science-based targets, and those science-based targets, the graph on your right shows what the science-based targets really it does for our community, and it takes a look at our population and our emissions compared to the global population and the global emissions, and then assesses a target based on what our anticipated growth is over time in both GDP as well as population. So the gold bar is what you would see in terms of the science-based targets. I think is what it's telling us is, and then the science-based targets you actually use on a regular basis, because we know that with innovation, some years we're going to be doing very well and other years we might not be doing as well. And so we'll continue to adjust that on, probably every time we do our greenhouse gas inventory or update that, whatever cycle that is, we'll update what our targets are to see how we're doing. But it is pretty significant. Even if we did a linear reduction, it's 2.2% reduction per year to 2050, and that's in a time where we're actually growing. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. And if you take a look at the inventory, you see the sectors which are generating the emissions. So the commercial building sector, the industrial building sector, residential building sector. So the building sector itself comprises about 68% of our greenhouse gas emissions. And then transportation, of course, and I would like to say that RTC is really trying to integrate sustainability into their transportation plan and has some goals for expanding our multimodal transportation infrastructure so that we can try to encourage people to make different choices around how they get to work or go to the store. And then, of course, solid waste and our wastewater. The other is, won't go into that. And then our agriculture is not much in our community. So when we take a look at developing a climate action plan, which is our next step, and I'll just give a little pitch for our Public Works Department and Tom Wharf. They, if you're not aware of it, about a year ago, they installed a cogeneration plant that captures the methane off of the waste water treatment plant and generates about 35% of the energy needs for running the plant through that cogeneration system. So that would be an example of how we would reduce our energy use. So we're taking a look at a sectored approach in terms of our climate action plan, and I think Peter worked with a group of individuals to draft a climate action initiative for the city, and that was also based on a sector approach. A lot of what is in that, I think, is going to translate into our formal climate action plan, and they did really great work around that. A couple of other issues, so the sectors that we talked about are the urban forest and local food system. Why are these important? Well, some communities actually have measured the impact to climate emissions or climate pollution from the food system. And as an example, the city of Vancouver, British Columbia measured theirs, and it was 23% of total emissions. So that is all the trucking of bringing the food in, the storing it in refrigerated warehouses, the on-demand trucking to get it to the grocery stores, the travel to the grocery stores, the electricity used for all of the different buildings. So if you can focus on strengthening and building, expanding your local food system, you can have an impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And most communities that are very well advanced in their climate action planning have very sophisticated local food policies and programs on how they are expanding the local food system. Urban forest, I think, is really important for our community. Our Parks Department has developed a urban forest management plan, and they did work with, there's a really great tool called iTree, and measured our urban tree canopy. I think it was measured at 5.6%. We have a goal, I think, to about double that over a period of time. Doubling it is important because, increasing it is very important for a couple of reasons. One is, as the temperature increases, and it's increasing faster in Reno than in many communities. It's one of the fastest increase in average temperatures. Reno and Las Vegas are two cities that are really getting hit hard in terms of that. What we'll see is more heat waves, and for vulnerable populations, seniors, maybe children with asthma, low-income families that might not have access to air conditioning like you and I probably do. They are going to be more vulnerable because of the heat waves and not having an area for them to go where they can get relief. So having a place where you have trees, either street trees or in parks or in plazas or pocket parks, that provides, attenuates the temperature, brings the temperature down, and provides some relief. So I think it's important from an equity issue as well as for just a number of other environmental issues. So green building. The green building industry was actually going pretty strong here before the recession, and then since the recession, it's been very slow to start rebuilding in our community. And so as soon as I got here, I started working with the U.S. Green Building Council of Nevada, and now I'm the chair of the U.S. Green Building Council of Nevada, and we're really trying to figure out how to expand both the professional network here as well as expand the market. We are forming a green building task force. As a matter of fact, the invites went out today to about 30 individuals that represent a broad range of industry professionals to help us develop policies and programs to achieve that goal, which is expanding green building in the marketplace. I would like to highlight that UNR is building LEED buildings. That's their new Peavine Hall, which was certified, I believe, in 2015. So the other thing that we were able to do is to secure a pretty significant grant. It's through the City Energy Project. That is a program of NRDC and the Institute for Market Transformation. It's a national program. The grant is going to allow us or provide us with the resources to expand energy efficiency and green building in our marketplace. We did the grant, the value of the grant, both in cash as well as technical assistance or in-kind contribution is about $560,000. We did have to come up with a $100,000 match. And because of the issues that Councilmember Breckus was explained to you, that the city was not in a position to meet that requirement, and so we went out to our community. And we do have a number of local organizations that have committed to sponsoring the City Energy Project. We're about 3/4 of our way to our $100,000 match. So if you or your organizations would like to contribute, please let me know. So there are 20 cities in the U.S. participating in this program. And we're actually in the second phase, so 10 cities participated in the first phase, and those are kind of your usual cast of characters, cities that have been working on sustainability programs for, a decade or decades. Chicago and Los Angeles and Miami-Dade County, Boston, Philadelphia. So all of the cities that really have been leading the way for many years. And so we are actually getting to learn from them kind of, working out through the barriers and the obstacles of the programs that they put in place to expand energy efficiency and green building. The program is really focused on the commercial and industrial building sector. So we did, in our proposal, identify what we're going to do in our community in terms of trying to expand the commercial green building and energy efficiency. But the baseline of the program is to try to get buildings to either start certifying using the LEED Green Building Rating System or to use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager to benchmark their energy performance. So the good news is that's already happening in our community. We've got about 60 LEED projects in our community. We've got 30 more right now currently in the pipeline, so we're going to see a lot more LEED buildings in our community. And we've got 14 Energy Star label buildings. So we have leaders in our community that the rest of us can learn from and leverage their knowledge and expertise. The things that we have committed to is to forming our task force so that the industry is helping us and advising us on what is practical for our community. The city leading by example, so benchmarking our buildings and publishing that information and taking a look at how we can establish goals for improving energy performance in our buildings. We're going to be launching a Better Building Challenge. So it's a voluntary challenge. We're going to challenge building owners and managers to actually benchmark their energy use using the Energy Star Portfolio Manager and making commitments if their buildings don't perform well. And by well, I would say 75th percentile or below. Then we'll be developing public policies that try to catalyze investment in energy efficiency and green building. We'll be providing industry education and training, building operator training, working with Dan Hawley to take a look at the 2015 International Energy Code as the state takes a look at adopting that code, and then really recognizing the leader. And that's going to be the foundation of our program, is recognizing all those great organizations within our community that are already showing leadership in this area. So I'm just going to transition right now and then talk about more globally our sustainability program. I think I talked to you a little bit about STAR Communities, which is a national sustainability performance standard for cities. And we are in the process of benchmarking our performance against that standard. Over 50 cities have completed benchmarking their performance so far. It's a relatively new program. It's only been out for a few years. Las Vegas and Henderson have been, they received their rating over a year ago. It is organized into 7 main categories. Those 7 categories listed above, they actually also span the triple bottom line. So economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, and social equity. And this is just a graphic of all the different goal areas. There's 44 goal areas, and you can actually achieve the goal by meeting performance outcomes. So those are performance-based metrics. If you cannot meet if the city cannot meet the performance-based metrics, they can also implement specific actions that are demonstrated to be best practice in that area for improving performance. The ones that are in color are the ones that we're actively measuring our progress against right now, and I'm doing that with 2 interns. We are hoping that once the new city manager comes on board, we are going to launch an interdepartmental team working on sustainability climate issues, and then we would start working with the individual agencies to help complete the assessment of how we're doing in STAR communities. So as an example, there's a goal area on compact and complete communities, and so you have to do an assessment in terms of walkability, density, and diverse uses, and then there is a performance outcome where you can actually just go to the EPA Smart Location Calculator and see whether or not you score well enough in the different centers. So we'll be working with Claudia and her team to identify, in order to achieve this, we have to identify 4 centers. So we'll identify the 2 regional centers and 2 of the other centers that have been identified in the new master plan, structural plan, and do the calculations to see if we meet that in any of our denser walkable neighborhoods. And then we are working with a advisory committee. The advisory committee has recently been formed. They've had 3 meetings. They're going to be providing leadership and making recommendation to the city manager's office on our sustainability and climate action plan. The advisory committee members are listed above. It's very diverse. We wanted to get a very broad diversity of the types of organizations that are in our community. We wanted to also make sure that we had diversity in gender at the table, as well as racial diversity at the table, so that we had representation from our community more holistically. They actually, we have done assessment that will help inform, and that's really taking a look at best practice, taking a look at communities that are similar to us or are relevant to our community in a number of different ways, and what is best practice in those communities, and that will be used to inform the work that the committee does. But the task force has decided that instead of spending 90 minutes every month getting together to develop an action plan over the long period of time, that they want to hold a half-day charrette or a half-day workshop. And so that's what we're in the midst of right now, is planning that half-day workshop. It'll be held in mid-July or August. As part of that workshop, we're going to be forming a number of different task forces that can bring expertise on specific issues that will then participate in that half-day workshop. And so it'll probably be, my guess is, well over 100 people that will be in a room together for a half a day, and the staff will be providing a significant amount of information to help them prepare for their discussion. And hopefully is what the outcome will be is, after the half day is, we will actually have a draft of our sustainability and climate action plan. So with that, that's where we're at.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
I've got one if nobody else. Oh, Commissioner Hawkins, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. We didn't touch on wind spires and wind turbines, and I get up every day and I look at the one that's not turning beside my house and wonder why. You and I spoke a couple months ago saying that there wasn't any money in the budget to fix that 21-foot prop. I need to know.
I actually need to figure that out. You're right. I wasn't aware that it still wasn't working, though, because it was generating. It is generating energy.
It can't. It's not going around. The smaller prop is.
Huh, okay. I'll
There's
take a
been
look at
one,
that.
one small prop's been taken down. There's another
Right.
small prop that's working, but the one with the 21-foot blades hasn't ran for
Okay.
almost 6 months.
Yeah, so I mean, the issue is that we do not have a contract to
agreement, yes.
maintain those. And they don't generate a lot of savings. And so if we enter into a contract, we'll actually be, it would basically turn into an education piece and a demonstration piece because we would be paying more for the maintenance of the wind turbine than we are getting in savings. But that is something that I do need to address.
I don't know, when I talked with everybody involved, including Jason Geddes when he was here, that one wind turbine was to produce $45,000 in savings. It was a 10 kW wind turbine, and it's still. And if we're not saving $45,000, even though we have to have a maintenance contract on there, we're losing all the way around.
Well, all of the turbines are underperforming based on what the projections were in the city. The city had 9 wind turbines.
Item number 4,
Yeah,
selection
so-
of chairman and vice chairman for the term.
There is a report I'll send you, though, because I did report for Councilmember McKenzie what our energy generation is for the wind turbines and what that relates to in terms of savings across all of our wind turbines. So I'll get that to you if you'd like it.
Sure, thank you.
Then I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As you know, we've got the master plan update process underway. I was at the sustainability workshop or themed workshop, I guess it was called, last week. And I think along the way, there have been a lot of questions related to sustainability, a lot of community interest. Can you just tell us how the sustainability plan and planning process in general is integrated with or communicating with at least the master plan process? And, kind of, are they self-reinforcing? Are they exclusive elements? And maybe at the end of the day, how are they going to tie together?
Well, I think the master plan is, in terms of schedule, is ahead of me in terms of developing a sustainability and climate action plan. And so I think that the master plan, the work that Claudia and Sienna and our team has done with our consultants is a very good step forward in terms of how the master plan is addressing sustainability. And I think we will really see a lot of changes in our community because of how the master plan will shape a focus on infill development through the structural plan. There are some goal areas in the master plan. So, for instance, there's a goal area around green building. So the sustainability plan will have specific policies and programs that will be put into place to expand green building. So I think that there will be some overlap. At this point in time, I don't think it's planned that they'll be integrated. There'll be more, our sustainability and climate action plan will be maybe somewhat more of an implementation plan for some of the goals that are in the master plan around sustainability.
So on a similar note, do you envision the Planning Commission having a role in assisting with or facilitating the implementation of your sustainability goals or objectives?
I haven't actually even thought about that. And so I will get with, you and Claudia, and we can discuss that. I don't think there's any issues from my point why that wouldn't be an important and valuable process.
I mean, especially if we have these sustainability policies and goals in the master plan. I mean, if we're making findings that, should reinforce what's in the master plan, then that by default should be reinforcing what's in the sustainability plan. So if we can make that connection going all the way through, I think it just makes sense to me.
Moving on to item number 6.
Yes.
Commissioner Weisky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Presentation of a proposal for
Bruce,
the development of
this
regional stormwater
sustainability program,
geographic information system map, including
isn't it
procedure required
the
plans,
desire
and
to
scope
cut down on the
possible
usage
recommendation to the
of
Western Regional Water
utilities
Commission
in the
Yes.
area? I mean, that's overall the whole thing, right?
Well, no, sustainability, it used to be focused on conservation of resources 20 years ago, but sustainability has really evolved where it's addressing everything from race and social justice issues, issues related to civil and human rights, to, the water and energy and waste issues that you might be more familiar with. And so there is a lot of really groundbreaking work that's happening across the U.S. in areas that typically communities may not have worked on around those issues in sustainability. So another couple.
Well, I mean, you showed us a pie chart,
Right.
but it didn't cover any of those areas. It looked like it was covering.
Oh, so the areas that are, this is more.
Not that, the actual.
Okay, so that's
circular pie
focused
chart.
on climate greenhouse gas emissions. And
Okay.
so our strategies to reduce emissions will be focused on the expanding energy efficiency, expanding renewable energy, expanding green building, trying to get people out of their cars, because 83% of our emissions related to transportation is from passenger vehicle use, and expanding recycling in our market.
Okay. So now how does this chart play into that?
This is, so sustainability, so climate and energy is in the second column. So it's one aspect of sustainability. So that is an element of our broader sustainability plan. But we're focusing in on the climate and energy early because we've got some very significant resources that have been brought to the city to help us move that forward.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how and/or which ones of these subtitles, if you will pertain to us as planning commissioners.
Well, but the built environment does specifically pertain to the planning commissioners. We're talking about things that you probably are talking about all the time, compact and complete communities. So that's, there's a lot in the master plan that's trying to drive more development of more compact and complete communities. Housing affordability, of course, is a very specific concern to our city council and our mayor and to our community overall. Infill and redevelopment, parkland, and one of the issues with parkland is, making sure that everybody in our community has equal access to parks. And then the transportation infrastructure. I think around the climate and energy, what relates to buildings is going to be specific to you as well. Historic preservation, that would relate to you. That's under education, arts, and community.
So I think that's why I was.
And these, you feel they're going to be recommended goals for designers, architects, planners coming before us with projects, and we will at some point in the future be applying our findings to these items? Is that the intent behind this? I mean, it's great to have goals, but if they're not going to be applied, then they're just goals.
Well, we're not going to have just goals. So this is actually a performance framework, and so we're measuring our performance against specific performance metrics, or we're taking a look at the recommended actions and seeing if we don't meet the performance metrics, are we doing the action? So for instance, in the compact and complete communities, it's likely that across the 4 neighborhoods we don't meet the performance outcomes. But the actions, some of the actions we're actually doing in the update of the master plan. So there's 2 different pathways to be able to demonstrate performance in that goal area. Now, what we're going to be doing is there's literally 650 outcomes or actions that we have to measure ourselves against. But what we'll be doing within the city is saying, okay, out of compact and complete communities, there's 3 outcomes and 10 actions. Which of these are relevant to us? So first of all are any of these are even important to our community? And then to assess what we're doing in those areas that are important to our community, so we understand baseline how we're doing compared to other communities or compared to national best practice. And then if there are some areas that are important to us but we're not performing very well, that provides us with a gap analysis in terms of what we can focus on in the future to improve or progress towards the desired outcome.
Okay.
And we will be developing, around green building, my approach has always been, I've been doing this work for about 25 years, has always been, you don't want to start with the stick, You know, you don't want to start by regulating anything. You want to work with leaders because they are very well respected typically within their peer network. They're going to talk to people within the community that respect them and tell them why they did build a green building or use the Energy Star portfolio manager and why it was important to their business or to, you know, their operations. And then highlighting and recognizing the leaders, they're going to bring people along. They're going to bring the early adopters along. Then potentially we'll provide some incentives to nudge others. And then when the market is more robust in these areas, then we might look at identifying opportunities to have some more regulatory, you know, requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you, Chair. LEED.
Yep.
How much more is it going to cost me to build a house with all the green standards than I am when I build a house without them? And how are we going to link that in with affordability of housing?
Well, I personally don't recommend LEED for homes unless you're doing a mid-rise multifamily project. If you're doing a single-family home, what I'd like to do, and I've talked to some folks at the Builders Association of Northern Nevada, is to recommend that our community take a look at the National Association of Home Builders National Green Building Standard. It's an ANSI standard for green building. There are over 100,000 homes that are certified in the U.S. already. And they've got information that they have been able to communicate in terms of the cost benefit. And so typically there may be a slight increase in cost. It's not a very high percentage, but the value in terms of the resale value or the sale value for the homes and how quickly those homes sell provide a financial benefit. And that's all documented, so we can bring that information from this national association to our community to help inspire residential building owners to embrace the national standard.
Thank you.
How to view this on a regional basis. So I'm not
Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much for being here.
And don't forget, I'll send you a sponsor prospectus if you'd like one.
Thanks, Lynn. All right, moving down our agenda to public hearings. The first item we have on our public hearing agenda is case number LDC 17-00056, the BOM Shoppers Square. And if we could have the applicants represent.
Claudia Hansen, Planning Manager. You'll see in your packet that the applicant has requested this item be continued, so we are looking for a motion to continue to the June 8th meeting.
I do not have that in my packet.
Commissioner Weisky, so moved.
Second. Commissioner Hawkins, second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. Is item 7.2 still on the agenda? Okay. LDC 17-0053, the Elm Estate. On this one, if we could start with a presentation from the applicant's representative, please.
That's what this commission is here for.
If you have one, you don't have to, but we're just collecting information at this point.
Okay. Can you show me?
And if you could state your name too for the record.
Hi guys, my name is Christy McDougall. I'm the venue coordinator for the Elm Estate. Just here to give you a brief overview of our project. Does this sound better?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
good. So my name is Christy McDougall. I'm the venue coordinator for the Elm Estate. I'm just here to give you a brief overview of the project. So as you can see, we have renamed the site. I'm going to go over a little bit of the history and our plans, and then we'll go from there. So the name of the project is the Elm Estate. We are talking about our special use permit. It's located at 1401 West 2nd Street. Now, many of you may be familiar with the old Chisholm House that's located at this property. It's, like I said, 1401 West 2nd Street. The picture on the left shows it's quite a historic building. It was built in 1880. Let me get my notes for this. and it was built as a ranch house on 115 acres west of town. At that point, you couldn't even access it from West 2nd Street. You had to go on 4th Street and jump across the railroad tracks. Now, the Chisholm family that lived there, has lived there on and off throughout the years since 1880 when it was built. They, at one point, had the largest number of milk cows in the state of Nevada, and they did form the Chisholm Ice Cream Company, which eventually sold the Carnation. If you go up in Virginia City, you can still see the signs on the sides of the building for it. In 1940, the Chisholm family made several construction improvements to the property. They added to the original house and built a detached 5-car garage, along with landscaping as well. In 2007, the tenants that were renting the house started using it as an event venue, specifically for weddings. They could accommodate up to several hundred guests in their open-air tents. They had tables and seating with a ceremony site on the pond as well. The guests would park in the parking lot to the west side of the property. The house could accommodate the brides and grooms to get ready upstairs. Now, in 2015, Carrie and Manfred Galgon purchased the Chisholm House along with the surrounding 5 parcels that included Chisholm Trailer Park. Now, when they took over ownership of the 10.5 acres, which stretches from the corner of Chisholm Street all along West 2nd Street to where it turns into Dickerson Road, they focused on really cleaning up the blight in the area by hiring nighttime security. They removed the hazardous trailers, hired additional maintenance employees to keep the property clean of debris, properly maintained. And the old Chisholm Trailer Park that is along the property is now called River West Resort, which is essentially an upscale small living community and an overnight RV resort, and it provides affordable, dense housing to the area as well. So as you can see here, this is a rendering of the property. Now, if you look to the right, that's the current house that we're working on right now. In the center of the left picture, you can see the 5-car garage, and to the left is the venue that we're proposing. Now, the progress on the house is going well. We have a building permit for that. We've been working on that since fall of last year. We are intending to use that as a B&B with 3 bedrooms. The projected completion date is about a month from now in June. Our next project is the garage. We have a building permit for that. Eventually, it's going to be storage and offices on the property. And upon special use permit approval of the application, we would like to submit for the venue building permit. Here's another view of the property. So you can see we have a current pond that they put in the 40s when they did the landscaping. And you can see a little bit better side view of the house if you look in the picture on the left. That is the original front entrance to the house right there that we're putting stairs in, as well as a patio. So on this photo, this is the venue elevations, and you can see the elevations. Total height is 25 feet. So the B&B, which is to the right of it, is at 32 feet, with the natural grade of the property actually sits below the B&B, so we're not looking at it being kind of this overtaking building on the property. We're looking at having a flow to it where it steps down naturally. And the max length of it is 40 feet. There are 2 exits. If you look at the top of the slide, you can see the layout and floor plan of it. There's 2 exits and entrances, which are both vestibules. There's a men's and women's restroom, a bar, 2 storage rooms, and in the center of that is the seating area, which is 3,300 square feet. It can fit about just under 300 people with our maximum occupancy. So just to gloss over some of the event types that we're looking at having at this property, we're looking at fundraisers, corporate events, private, community events, and weddings, of course. This property is also exclusively, the B&B is only available with your venue rental there, so we aren't operating it as a full-time B&B. The hours of operation generally are from 9 to 11 p.m. However, for events, we anticipate like an 8-hour rental period, which is essentially broken up as a 2 to 5 p.m., which is the 3-hour setup time, a 5 to 10 p.m. event time, 5 hours, and then there's a cleanup from 10 to 11 p.m. So the cleanup, we anticipate doing a 30-minute outside, quick cleanup, and then 30-minute inside. No machinery is involved in that, so we'll be able to abide by the sound laws. The bar, we're looking at doing last call 30 minutes before the end of the event. And like I said, we're only looking at doing one event at a time on the property. Now, if you look on this slide, we have our landscaping plan. And landscaping takes up 44% of the total site. We are required to have roughly 3,000 square feet of landscaping. We're proposing over 5,000. We're adding 47 trees to the property. There are quite a few large, like we said, elm trees, which it has an interesting history I'm sure a lot of you know about. So that's 65 existing to that. Now, we have 53 mature existing shrubs. We're looking to add an additional 229 as well to that. On the east property line, if you look to the right, there is an existing 6-foot tall wooden fence. We're looking at adding sound mitigating plants with trees and shrubs to reduce the sound in sight and basically screen the property from the residences that are to the right there. This is all suggested to us after having our sound engineer consultation. But if you look to the left of it, which is to the west of the property, that's the existing dirt lot that's there, which was formerly used as a parking lot by the prior tenants. We are looking at putting in 43 parking spaces there, as well as utilizing Chisholm Street, which is to the north, just to the top there, for an additional 28 parking spots. So that's a total of 71 parking spots available. As far as our sound mitigation, we have taken great lengths to make sure that we are abiding by Reno Municipal Code with that. We have hired a sound engineer. If you look through the special use permit, there is a large report in there from him. So the average outdoor ceremony lasts about 15 to 25 minutes. This is the sound, amplified sound that we're looking that's going to be on the property. Everything else will be inside in our event venue. And if you look at the Reno Municipal Code, it is kind of interesting because what they do is they essentially take an average equivalent sound level over a 24-hour day. So yes, there may be small peaks with spoken word that's amplified over speakers, but what we are looking at doing with our speakers after meeting with a local company named Moonlight and Sound is essentially doing a privately controlled sound system that's mounted to the trees rather than having DJs come in and set up their own speakers. And that will be on the east property line facing west, so away from where the tenants live on the right there. And the speakers will be a line of array speakers, which provide a horizontal shooting piece of sound. It's classified as a 50 by 70 degree speaker, which are called horns. So these control sound in the direction it's pushed in, and they assure very little sound is presented to the sides or behind where they are put on the trees. We also have 2 vestibule entrances and exits to the event venue as well, which cuts down on sound, having those 2 lines of double doors. What else do we have? We're also going to have a sound level meter, which the sound engineer recommended to us just to make sure that we are abiding by the sound laws in Reno. The additional sound mitigation measures are taken with the landscaping like we talked about before, with the sound mitigating trees and shrubs that we're going to be putting on the right side of the property. And if we do end up booking any outdoor events that do have amplified sound, we will be getting a special event permit for those events. And I just wanted to bring up that the owners do own all of the property that is around. So we do have a vested interest in making sure that our tenants are happy and we're not making a lot of noise and keeping everyone happy where they are living. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you with questions if we have them.
Sounds good.
And we'll have Jeff come up and get staff's presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. Jeff Borkhardt, Associate Planner for the record. Want to thank Christy. She covered a good number of the points that I was going to make, but just as a reference as to why we're here tonight for the special use permit, a few of the uses, so the wedding event venue is not really defined in our code, so it falls under several different uses. One is the nightclub use definition, which is for the live entertainment. If the applicant is proposing any sort of DJs, spoken word, all the way up to magicians on the site, they classify as a nightclub under our definition in our code. The bar is self-explanatory as a bar if you're serving drinks over a countertop. that's classified as a bar in our code, and that requires a special use permit as well. The outdoor recreation component, so the events that are occurring outside are also subject to a special use permit. The other key aspect of this, and the reason why we went to such great details on sound mitigation, was because of the residential adjacency. Directly to the west of the site, the property is within an MF14 zone, and so that multifamily zoning designation triggers the special use permit for residential adjacency. The applicant is proposing on constructing a new event center and then adding offices into what is currently being converted into a storage facility, but eventually will be converted into offices if the special use permit is approved. That triggers the non-residential development adjacent to residentially zoned property. So as the applicant mentioned, the hours are 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. However, there is a condition in your, a recommended condition to end events at 10 p.m., allowing them an hour to clean up so that they stop at operations at 11 p.m., which is allowed in our code. One of the other key features in here, they mentioned landscaping's installed throughout the site. There was an error in calculating the shrubs, so there is a condition in there to add 282 shrubs rather than what they've mentioned on there. Then there's some other key conditions on here. So I wanted to point out a couple unique aspects of this property. So there's a line, a property line that runs right through the middle of the existing residence here, and it goes like this. And then there's a line right here. And so one of the actual conditions in there is to recommend a reversion to acreage and a boundary line adjustment so that we can have the property lines align with the zoning boundaries, which have been revised through an administrative interpretation. Let's see if there's a couple other things. Christy mentioned the speakers, the installation of the sound meter, and there's another condition recommending no propping indoors. All these are added in as recommended conditions of approval, in addition to having security on site that's commensurate to the number of people in the venue at any given time. So I think that's it. Staff is recommending approval, and I'm available for any questions should you guys have any. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, thank you very much. Wasn't sure what you were doing. This is a public hearing item. Before we get to the public comment portion of it, I will ask the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Snyder, we'll start with you.
Commissioner Schneider, I visited the site.
Commissioner Reno, as did I.
Commissioner Johnson, as did I.
Commissioner Gower, as did I.
Commissioner Hawkins, I met with the applicant.
Commissioner Levis, I visited the site.
Commissioner Weisky, I visited the site.
Okay, thank you very much. I am going to open public comment. I do have a public comment card from John Kukulika. Kukulika, thank you. And John, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone, stating your name, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comment.
Okay. All right. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. My name's John Kukulika. We own 3 acres about 2,500 feet west of this venue, and we're not against it. You know, it said for or against on the thing, so I had to check one box, so I put against, but I'm not. But we have a lot of concerns. We're concerned about that dirt parking lot to the west of the property. There's no lines, there's no pavement. She says Chrissy says there's going to be 71 parking spaces. So if you figure 2 people per car, that's maybe 150 people. Where are the other 150 people going to park? Well, what they've done in the past, they park on Dickerson Road or West 2nd Street in front of the property, which is just a one-way road each way. And then, you know, the hundreds of people who commute by there every hour to go to work and home from Dickerson Road have to go 2 miles an hour to drive past this venue. It's very unsafe, and that has to be addressed. There should be no parking allowed on West 2nd Street when there's an event going on here. But that still leaves 150 other cars, or, 150 other people, or another 71 cars. Where are they going to park? There is no place to park, so that's a concern. So I don't think you should allow 300 people to come to this thing if you don't have parking for it. So that's one concern. Hold on a minute. Sorry, guys. The live entertainment, the decibels, I want to know how many decibels are allowed, because we can hear when there is live entertainment there. If the wind is blowing right, it wakes us up at night. Now, I'm good that it stops at 10 o'clock, I guess. That's okay, but nightclubs. I used to work at the Sands, and we had these pool parties on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we had strippers there, and noise and everything else, and all the people used to complain it was a big, frickin' mess, and I don't want to see that happening here. I used to own Julius's Castle in San Francisco on Telegraph Hill, a little one-way street up and the one-way street down, and they used to make us valet park our cars. So we had to hire valets to drive the cars either down to Washington Square, and for the, it was a big problem, but I mean, where are you going to put the cars? So that's really one of our best concerns. Hold on. And, we know a lot of the people sitting there, and we respect them and love them, and we're not against the project, but we just want some, guarantee that our concerns are going to be addressed. So I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, John, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to make a comment on this item? And if you would come up to the microphone and well, get to the microphone, tell us who you are, and then you can fill out a pink card.
Okay.
Give it to Michelle. when you're
Hi,
done.
my name is Joseph Snyder. I'm the architect of the project, and I also own the company that's developing it with the owners. To address John's concern about the parking, number of parking, according to our parking engineer study, when you have a special event, it's designated that, or determined that more than one person comes in a car, especially in weddings and things like that. So the reason we use the 71 spaces is based completely on the occupancy load of the building. And with so many, it was like 2.4, I can't remember the exact number, but 2.4 to 2.5 people per car reduces the necessary parking requirements. And like I said, don't quote me on that particular study, but it's in our study, and the engineer that we hired gave us that information. At this time, some of that property to the west it's hard to tell, but it is gravelled, and the intent is to keep it from turning to dirt. And so that would be the owner's benefit, because they want to keep the dust down and the things that are necessary too. And we did not address parking on West 2nd Street at all. We pushed everything to Chisholm. Chisholm is a 40-foot wide road, and it has enough parking on both sides of the street to accommodate the safety on that. Plus, we also provided an access on Chisholm so that people don't have to come out onto 2nd Street. They can go out Chisholm and go east or west from there. So that was a big part of this design of the parking lot. So I think I've pretty much addressed whatever he can ask me, but he can, the client is really concerned about having a really good environment for the surroundings, since they own so much of the property, almost 11 acres there. So they've really spent some money on cleaning up the other parts of the property, and they're really willing to invest quite a bit into this project. So any questions, I'm available.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you could just fill out a
Yeah, I'll go fill
pink
out
card too. And we'll get back to you on the questions.
Okay, thanks.
We're just in public comment at this point. So you can have 3 minutes for your public comment. We got your presentation. You're welcome to make a public comment, or we'll get back to you with questions when we get to discussion.
I just have a quick answer for you on a couple of your concerns. So, it's a little different than what it was before. With the tents, they had a lot of outdoor
And if you
sound.
could address the commission
Oh,
too,
sorry.
because we're the ones who have to make the
Sorry,
decision
guys.
here.
This is my first time doing this.
That's
Can you
all right.
tell?
That's all right.
So I totally understand being concerned with the issue of sound. However, this is a completely different project because we will have an indoor event center as opposed to an open air tent. And the only sounds that we're looking at having is during a ceremony with spoken word and soft music. So I don't think that loud music should be a concern at all. Now, I understand the issue with the parking on West 2nd Street. We also agree that no one should be parked on West 2nd Street. So we're looking at providing small directional signs that we can put out that are approved by the city during events that lead people onto parking onto Chisholm Street. And we will make sure as a staff to make sure that people are not parking on West 2nd Street. So that's it.
If you could fill out a public comment card too, since you made a public comment. Appreciate it. Anyone else before we close public comment? Okay. Close it. Bring it back to the commission for questions of the applicant's representative, of staff. Commissioner Hawkins?
Commissioner Hawkins, for the record, I'd like to address or have someone in the group address the ADA situation on the property. As far as, what's available with the ADA.
Okay, the bathrooms that we've created inside both buildings all meet the
Can you
ADA
state your name for the record,
requirements.
please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Joseph Snyder, architect.
Thank you.
The event center has met, or because of the architecture and because of today's environment and the way building is, we address that on every project. We do, as an architect and developer, we do a lot of retrofits and remodels of existing old buildings, and we've had to create bathrooms and ADA address. This event center has pedestrian access both from Chisholm Street and West 2nd Street through walkways, and it's all on level. There's, the event center is not planning to be raised up. It already meets the elevation for 100-year flood at the existing site. So we're not going to have grade changes, and it'll just be simple access and to both buildings. Now, on the B&B portion of the project, we will have access to with a slight ramp. We only have to raise about 2.5 feet. So we have that already addressed on our building permit. And the office facility, it's all on ground level. It was an existing 3-car garage, so it just drives right in. And so we're also upgrading the bathroom in that bathroom, the existing bathroom, to meet ADA requirements with handrails and all the necessary accoutrements that have to go into the building to be at the right elevations and heights. And the bar level is at 34 inches, which is ADA addressable accountability. So.
The second question on that is, if I was invited to an event there, and where would I park if I'm bound in a wheelchair? Where would I be able to make access to the venue?
Well, I don't have a pointer, but if you look right here is one of the main entrances to the project. There's a van access parking point there. There's another secondary entrance to the project there, which has an ADA parking, and a third one at this point, which has an ADA access parking to the project. So it's right there. You're first. All in every building that we do, the code requires us to be as close as possible, within reason, of access to the project. In some projects I've done all over Reno, sometimes that's not possible. We have to put them on the other side of the road, and then we stripe the roads to be able to watch out for people as they go through.
So if I'm in my wheelchair, I won't have to come across a gravel road or
No,
gravel parking lot?
that's all paved. That's
Okay.
that parking lot has to be asphalt, or because of the code requirements to make parking. When you create a new parking lot, it has to meet all the requirements. We have the lighting, that's all designed to cover. And we have a little spillover on the roadways, but all the lighting in the whole project, there's a lighting study also and a photometric plan that shows the percentage of lighting that goes around the project for all the accessibility access, and also doesn't spill over into the neighboring properties. It only spills over in Chisholm Street and on West Second at the driveways.
Thank you.
Joe, could you point out the paved parking area and then the unpaved area that you're not going to be using, just for clarification?
Yeah,
on
okay,
the
so
record?
this is all dirt right now. Everything's dirt right now. We're gonna be paving all of this area. It's about 19,000 square feet. We're gonna be paving all the way up to this building, all the way down and through this area, right in that area. And this is, right in this area, if you go study the site, for some reason there was a road there. At some century, there was and it's asphalt down in there now. And then this is gravel right in here, of which it will be treated to keep the dust down. Nothing worse than having a dust storm come to a wedding event. So they have no intention to leave that at that. And eventually, you know, who knows what this is, once it's all done in the future, if things are successful, they have expanded for more parking or anything that they need to at that time. But our focus is this percentage of the property at this time. And it was mentioned that there was 67 trees on the property already that were just, you know, quite a number of them mature, and then we've added the requirements, and then this whole area right here will be sound mitigating plants and things. Is that good?
Thank you very
I
much.
do want to commend the applicant and the engineer because they're only going to take out one of the mature trees, so that's great.
Yeah, we ended up with just one. We moved the building, so we could there's just one right in that area, right in there. But we moved the building. We actually relocated it to miss a number of the trees on purpose, because we had a lot of big property that we were trying to work with. We eliminated the driveway that was there. Everything's pushed to the west. The client's been really careful about keeping the integrity of the project.
All right, Joe, let's see what's, the other commissioners have questions. Commissioner Johnson,
Thank you,
start
Mr.
there, and then we'll go
Chairman.
to Commissioner Reno.
Okay, Jeff.
Joe.
Jeff.
Oh,
behind
you want
please.
Jeff? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Jeff, you mentioned in your presentation this is a difficult building and type to classify. What was staff looking at with respect to parking count requirements? How was that determined?
So we actually calced out, or we had the applicant calc out every single building and what their use is on the site. So the parking requirements came to 73 parking spaces required based on the bed and breakfast, based on the office use on the property, and based on the event center. And so if all of those were operating at the same time, what would the parking be on the site? And that's 73 parking spaces. Now, it's assumed that the bed and breakfast would operate in association with the events, and that the offices would be for the staff for the wedding event venue. So obviously, there's going to be some sharing of parking there. And so what Mr. Seleghi did in his parking study is said, well, in reality, maybe only 71 parking spaces are required. So even if we took 73 or 71 parking spaces, 44 parking spaces are proposed to be provided on the site. The code allows for up to 50% of that parking requirement to be provided on street. And I think 27 or 28 spaces are on the south side of Chisholm Street to the north side of the property. And so with that, they should be able to meet their 71. And if necessary to come close to the 73 spaces required by code, they can, Second Street is wide enough to accommodate parking, but that would only be 2 parking spaces that would need to be provided on Second Street. So we have the option to allow for a reduction, which is included in the staff report as a request, but if it's not granted, there still should be sufficient parking on the street.
Okay, and then so thank you for mentioning Second Street, because that was my question. Following up on that, the way I'm looking at this parking lot layout, it seems to lend itself to, I wouldn't say necessarily jumping the curb, but the section on the westernmost portion of the parking lot, the way the entrance goes into there, you turn in and you're basically pointed directly at the undeveloped area that you would then need to turn again in order to park. My question is, is there any thought from staff standpoint that is preventing that from becoming overflow parking? Not from an operational standpoint, but just looking at this in terms of the layout here, I don't see anything other than a few shrubs that prevent direct access into the dirt area from that parking should that occur. Is there, and so then I guess, looking at that, is there an issue from staff standpoint if that was used as an overflow parking area for an event that, had 300 some odd?
There is an issue, and staff has recommended a condition number 11, to not allow that area to be used for parking. In my mind, typically when there's a curb, I know you and I both drive small cars, so it's
an
hard
impediment
to
to me.
But we are in Nevada, so there's a lot of people with trucks here. So I do understand your point that maybe potentially people could jump that, but ideally the landscaping and our parking requirements and our code are designed in such a way that you're not supposed to drive over the curb and through a bunch of landscaping to get into the overflow parking, and so we have made it clear that operationally this is not supposed to be used as that, as a condition, just in case for some reason they want to use that, or they go down that path, or the property changes hands to another owner and they don't operate the same way. They have to abide by those conditions because those conditions run with the land. And so that will be, and it's explicit in condition number 11, something that code enforcement can take with them and say, hey, look, you guys are parking on this unpaved surface. You're not supposed to be doing that per your conditional use permit or your special use permit.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to follow up on that? Because I have a different question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so now I'll bring the applicant back up for a question on the building. So whether John or Chrissy, whoever maybe I can pose the question and you can respond to it. The east side of the event center, if I'm looking at it, are those operable doors to open the event center to the plot, what appears to be a deck facing out there?
It's a patio, and the answer is yes.
Okay. So how then, and maybe Jeff can respond to this, there's a requirement about not allowing doors to be propped open, yet the whole intent of this is to have doors that are open in and out. Is there a different interpretation in terms of how this is going to be looked at, especially considering the acoustics that we might be addressing separately as a part of this, or included in this project?
No, those are doors in staff's mindset, and so that condition would cover those doors. However, being the age that I am, I've been attending a lot of weddings recently. So usually there's a cocktail hour where you can go mingle between two different things. They're playing low-level music. That's not going to be when the DJ comes in and they're dancing and all that stuff. So when that starts to take place, when the event's going on, those doors got to be shut.
Okay. So as long as the applicant's aware that those are classified as doors and not an open to the patio. And then this one will be for the architect. A question on this. One of the concerns and one of the findings that we have to make is looking at some compatibility with the existing areas around us. I guess my question to you, you've got a 1880 brick building that's the center point for this site. The new event center, there's no brick.
There is brick. We tried to bring in on the sides of each side of the glass doors. It doesn't show in the color, but those are brick panels that are going to be the same brick from the site.
So only on I'm looking at the west, the east elevation.
Hang on, let Commissioner Johnson finish his question.
My question, I'm looking at this building and perhaps it's the scale that I'm looking at, but I see the majority of the building is metal panels. It looks like on the edges on the side, we've got, is that wood? That is the brown on here. I've got, so metal panels. So the only brick that you're putting in is basically the reveal around that east elevation on those large doors.
That's correct. There is fencing on the high, 6
I'm
foot
not
high.
asking about the fencing.
Oh,
I'm
the
talking,
building-
I'm
the
talking
building
about the
is-
building in terms of looking at this and how it relates to the existing historic building that's next to it. And I'm trying to find the materials, the scale, the dormers, the roof pitch, anything on here that would, in my mind, make this feel like, we're responding to the building adjacent to it. And I'm just wondering why there isn't more of a use of brick, or maybe some of the detailing around the doors, something like that. I'm just trying to reconcile the image that I'm seeing in front of me and the building that is there, which is being renovated quite nicely. I've looked at, I like everything that's going on there. I was just expecting more in this building to maybe play off of that. So is but the brick is there, it's just on the east elevation. Is it anywhere else in the building?
At this particular time, no, we wanted to bring the element of the brick into the courtyard. And also we've taken, and since you've been on the site, you saw the decking that we built on the existing building. And that wood is the same wood that we're gonna be doing on the two, we'll call them the north and south of the elevations. The roof pitches are matching with the existing office facility or the old garage, the 5 and 12. We've got a light, we're trying to project light into the building, and we didn't want to build a barn that looked like a barn. We wanted to make something that is a little bit architectural. We wanted to keep the pitch down, like Christy said, so that we would keep way below the existing building. The main focus on this building is actually the old house. And we didn't try to draw a lot of attention to this other facility, but we wanted to have the square footage that we were working with. And as you heard before in the presentation, we think a lot about energy. And those panels on the west side are designed specially, higher R values that are on regular construction, and maintenance, low maintenance and low emissions, no paint.
So the idea then is that you're focusing on the central portion of the site and trying to make something cohesive there rather than around the perimeter.
Yeah, that's correct. We're trying to focus in on the elements that are natural. We've got a beautiful little pond there. We've got a lot of growth.
Thanks.
Going.
I'm going to let some of the other commissioners, that's
Okay.
answered my question.
Okay,
Thank you very
thank you.
much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Reno?
Yeah, just a quick question. Jeff, maybe you're the right person. I just want to make sure that I understand, as I was reading this, the city owned the 2 parcels on the north portion of the subject parcel, project area, but that's next to Chisholm, correct? Not across the street from Chisholm, not north of Chisholm.
Jeff Borkard, Associate Planner. Yes, that is correct. This parcel and this parcel right here are currently owned by the city of Reno. They've been in negotiations with the applicant for a while to sell those properties.
So it hasn't closed on here. It says expected the end of April.
I don't know if it's closed yet. I can defer that to the applicant. Okay. There we go. It's in escrow right now.
Okay.
And I know that the city has been working with the applicant for a number of years. The reason why it's taken so long is because while we were going through the retract process, they ran into some Native American remains over there. And so we had to develop a monitoring agreement with the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. and that took a while. And then once that was implemented and adopted by the city council, that's when we could go forward with selling the property, and that's where we're at now. We're currently in escrow.
Does the city own the property north of Chisholm?
We
Or is that
do,
part of-
and I
okay.
believe a portion of Chisholm is actually a parcel as well, and the city owns that.
A
I
portion
don't know
of
if
Chisholm?
I don't know if I don't know if Chisholm is 100% dedicated through here. I can defer
Oh, I
to
guess
her.
that actually brings up a good question, maybe for Bill, really quick. So the parking, I mean, I see the concern of the adjacent neighbors with the parking with a large event that you might not have enough. It's 40 feet, I heard, right? Chisholm's 40 feet. Can they
Chisholm
park on?
Street is 40 feet wide.
Can they park on both sides?
They can park on both sides.
They can park on both sides.
Yes.
What about on Second Street, West Second Street, marking it to not be parked on Second Street?
I would be willing to include that as a condition if that would be something that the planning commission would recommend. I would write that condition at approval of the city traffic engineer, so we ensure that if they have an issue with the no parking, that they have approval of that as well.
As it stands right now.
I don't know that they would. I wouldn't anticipate there
Okay,
being a
but
problem.
as it stands right now, is West Second Street wide enough to have parking on it?
West Second Street is wide enough to have parking. It is fairly narrow, but in the area here, it does allow parking in front of.
It does
West
allow,
Second
but
Street, yes.
what would happen if we made a condition? You'd mark it red, or you'd put up signs? How would that work?
We would ask that the applicant provide the signage and curb painting as necessary. So
Okay.
It'd probably end up being both curbs and signage. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Mr. Weisky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Applicant's representative, if you'll come forward, please. Condition number 11 is referencing the overflow parking to the west, and you're going to, it's my understanding, and I'd like you to yay or nay it, that area is going to remain just dirt. Is that correct?
To the west of the parking lot?
To the
is that
west of
correct?
the parking lot?
Yes, it will, sir.
Okay. Okay, and that is at this time going to be blocked off and not used as parking, correct?
Yes, with
Okay.
landscaping.
And the owner is aware via you and the architect that if there's overflow parking in that area in dirt west in the undeveloped area is used as parking, your special use permit can be suspended and ultimately revoked, right?
I understand that, yes.
Does the owner understand that?
Yes, she does.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for you. Jeff, I have a question for you, please. Can you tell me why you did not write a condition of no amplified music outside? I mean, we're talking 7 days a week till 10 o'clock at night, and normally we don't go in that direction.
I'll get back to it in just a second. I think I have a condition that does cover.
That does cover it, and I'm just not reading it correctly. That's fine.
I think there's a condition that covers it, not necessarily specifically saying no outdoor amplified music, but I
Okay.
think it talks about events and stuff.
Okay.
So I'll
And-
get back to you in just a second.
Okay, and my concern is not necessarily what we've heard from this owner this evening, but as we have seen with a lot of other projects over the years, it's a change of ownership and a change of ideas, and it just takes one small change in their performa that creates problems for the existing neighbors. So I want to make sure we're clear on it. If you would take a few minutes and look at it.
What I can say before going back is that there was an intention for amplification outside. The applicant did mention that they were going to, in their sound analysis, that they were going to have outdoor music, outdoor spoken word through wedding ceremonies. That is something that there are a number of different mitigation measures proposed in terms of orienting the speakers, placing a sound meter at the property line, and a number of other different things to ensure that the sound that is generated by those outdoor speakers does not exceed the 65 decibels that is required by our code requirements. So, and then I'll look through any other use restrictions that may potentially be in here.
Okay, thank you. Bill, I have a question for you, please. To go back to Commissioner Reno's question about parking on Second Street and
Yes.
conditioning no parking on Second Street, would you go into a little more detail about what you would be looking for if we leave it to the engineer's discretion about no parking on Second Street? Because to be quite honest with you, I'm in favor of absolutely no parking on Second.
And yeah,
Without
for the,
going back to you.
For the record, Bill Gall, senior engineer, we just want to make sure that there's no required parking that we're taking away from some other user in this area. I don't anticipate that be the case.
Okay.
But in front of this parcel, I would anticipate that there'd be no issue with making it no parking in front of the parcel.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Bill a follow-up question?
Yes, please
Thanks.
do.
The parcel to the north of Chisholm is a city parcel. It's a gravel lot, effectively. Can they be parking on that?
It's a city parcel right now. No, I mean, they can't go out there and park on it without authority from the city.
Okay.
So
make sure they know that.
Good question. Jeff, I have a quick question for you. Maybe you'll get to it. Why don't you do your condition first and then, because my question relates to noise too.
Okay, so it was all coming back to me as I sat down. I originally had written a condition talking about the specific uses that would be allowed outdoors as the applicant came through and offered up that they would only go through and do wedding ceremonies outside. The one thing that we found difficult from an administrative enforcement standpoint is how do you draw the line of what type of event is occurring outside? If code enforcement goes out there and they're having some kind of alternative wedding ceremony that you think is an Easter egg hunt or something like that, you don't really necessarily know whether it's a wedding ceremony or not. So we didn't want to get into the weeds of regulating what types of events that are happening outside. This isn't a wedding event venue. The proposal is for a special use permit. One of the proposals for the special use permit is for outdoor recreation, which covers the outdoor wedding event venue. And I think there are sufficient conditions with regards to the orientation of the speakers and the continuous monitoring with the sound meter. And then in addition to that, there's the condition that we put on anything that could have sensitivity with regards to noise. Condition number 8, which says, should noise become a consistent issue or nuisance, the applicant shall be required to submit additional mitigation measures or changes in operations to eliminate nuisances. So before they even get to a potential suspension or revocation, that they can continue to work with staff and code enforcement in order to address whatever issues that may potentially be in play, happening out there, so that we can solve it, regardless of whoever the operator is.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Okay. Jeff, to follow up on that, on those conditions, so you've got condition number 7 in there that requires the noise monitoring. So there's a monitoring and then there's a reporting component, right? So if they're monitoring, how does the city know what the outcomes of that monitoring are?
So they would be required to keep a record. I didn't condition that, but code enforcement has the ability to take a look at their meter. Code enforcement themselves also have a meter, so they can go out and check during events while things may be occurring. That's what they do on a number of different sites throughout the city.
And I like how it's set up in here with 7 and 8 next to each other, because at 7, you're monitoring, but you don't really want it to get to a situation where you get to condition number 8, because that means that there's a problem and somebody's being disturbed by it, and we haven't done our job on the front end to prevent the noise. So I'm okay with condition number 8, but I'm concerned that it's an unnecessary. I think that we could do more with 7 to prevent even getting to 8. And I'm not sure procedurally what we can do. I'm seeing a monitoring piece, but I'm not seeing, I mean, it would be up to the goodwill of the applicant, and I think, I'm sure you would if you saw it get past that 65 decibels, but can we, as Commissioner Weisky mentioned, subsequent property owners, can we provide that additional check so we don't get to the situation where we're going to condition 8?
So, Commissioner, would you suggest something like keeping a log of some sort?
And that's still, for me, it falls under the category of monitoring. My question is, how do we get from the monitoring to the reporting? And for me, the reporting is they would be required to submit that log at some point for city staff to take a look at.
So my worry with that is that creates an additional burden on staff that 20 years down the road, somebody's going to get that log and go, I don't know what to do with this. It's just going to get thrown in a file somewhere. I think that what the purpose of the monitoring is to continuously put the onus on the applicant to continue that, rather than having staff, especially since we don't know what staff would be in charge of that, that constant reporting. So I would be wary about going down that path from an administrative burden standpoint.
If I could jump in, Claudia Hansen, Planning Manager, I do agree with what Jeff has just said. And it is common with a condition like this to require the applicant to maintain a log for about 30 days afterwards. So if we do have a code enforcement case, we can go and contact the applicant and review the files from the monitoring.
Mr. Chairman, in conjunction with that, Commissioner Weisky, may I ask Jeff, why was the sound monitoring only included on the eastern property line when the western property line is also adjacent to residentially zoned property? And the winds do change down there, they swirl.
So it's not necessarily adjacent per our code standards. It is close to residentially zoned property, but it's not adjacent.
It's not adjacent,
So
okay.
the code standards address non-residential adjacent to residential. It doesn't necessarily address
Okay.
properties close by.
I apologize for that, because I thought adjacency was in there.
Well, if I can jump in, this is a special use permit. So code does say one thing, but that's for any project that walks in the door. This is a special use permit. So you're looking at it with a kind of a deeper look into it. If you feel it's necessary or appropriate to have the monitoring also on the west, then you have that ability to do that through the special use permit process. You're not just locked into code in this point. You are able to put conditions on it that help you to meet the findings.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on that, I like the idea of having a log, but how does that work? Is that a continuous reading, or is it every 5 minutes? How do those decibel meters read? And how does that log being monitored, I guess, is the question. Should we make it a continuous log for 30 days and put that into our conditions so that they have to have a continuous meter reading, or every 1 minute? I mean, I don't know how often they can gather data.
I would recommend that they consult with our code enforcement, in case they're the ones that use the data and are most familiar with the different equipment that's out there.
Okay.
And so with them to work with code enforcement to get the most appropriate data that helps them to enforce the conditions. So
Okay.
we can put that in there with
Yeah,
consultation
that
with
might
community
be
development.
good.
I mean, with code enforcement.
Okay.
Commissioners, other questions? Okay, who wants to start us off on discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Weisky.
I have a question for Commissioner Johnson, because he touched on something, and I respect his opinion on the architectural piece. because that's also a concern that I had and have a hard time making the finding about the architectural component. We have a beautiful home built in the 1800s. It's on the historical registry, and I'm seeing it's not. Okay. Thank you for answering that, Commissioner Johnson.
You're welcome.
And just for clarification, we're in discussion with the commission, so we'll get back to you if we have questions.
I had concerns about the new buildings being built and meeting the same architectural standards. After asking your questions, how do you feel about the new buildings and the architectural components being brought forward?
I appreciate that question. I think I at least understand the intent. I still struggle with the execution. I think there's some other things. I notice in the elevations that, there's some clear story windows that are being brought in at the gable ends, as opposed to looking at perhaps some dormers that would be more indicative of what is on the existing building as a way of bringing some light in. I can understand not doing brick all the way around the building. I mean, there's a certain compatibility versus a mimicry that we would certainly want to stay away from. I may be concerned that there's a number of materials that are being brought in addition to, say, the brick and the metal panel. We've got brick, we've got metal panel, we've got some trellises, we've got some wood, and a roofing. I'm working my way around it. I mean, I think this is there's other ways that it can be addressed, but at least making the nod to it, doing it on the side that's all facing the wedding events with the materials, with the surfaces. I mean, the decking and that, which is not the historic aspect of it. It definitely helps to tie those together. I guess probably the one thing that just jumps out at me is that matching the roof pitch and the scale of the smaller building is probably appropriate, with the lower pitch roof, mimicking what's happening with the garage, because then you're kind of treating it more as an outbuilding to the main building. I would maybe recommend some additional brickwork, maybe consider some dormers, but I think based on hearing what they're doing and what their approach is, I'm closer to understanding it and feeling a little bit more comfortable with what they're doing. Hopefully that.
Thank you. That gives me a better picture, because conceptually, I like the idea of mixing and blending. And so to me, it's like any piece of art. You might paint it green, I might paint it red. And neither one is wrong. Maybe it should have been blue. And they could all be blended together to work. And it's how it's being put together. I was kind of set back by the whole thing of it. It seemed like they were trying to leave the brick building out and the focal point. But that's a personal opinion, just like the architect put his personality into this. So for discussion, though, I would really like to see a condition added to that no parking on West 2nd Street be added to this project. And I can tell you from being within a couple of blocks of this, on many given afternoons, and especially on Friday nights in the fall, you can hear when a certain trumpet player misses a key note over in the Reno football stadium, so when the wind's blowing in the right direction. So the sound does carry in multiple directions. It doesn't just carry east. So maybe condition number 7 should include a sound meter at the west property line also, because there are a lot of residents down Dickerson Road. Obviously, the people who are staying in the trailer park know what they're getting when they get there. It's a venue across the street. And it's all owned by the same operation right now. But that's a consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I'll respond to that. I agree with both of those conditions. I think that having the monitor on the other side of the property is important. Noise was the number one issue for me with this proposal. And I would also agree with the parking. You know, I was going to propose that we had some sort of directional signage that would push people up to Chisholm, but I like the idea of having the, just it closed on Dickerson. I think that works too, so. Other thoughts from commissioners? We've got a proposal for an amended condition. So when you make your motion, keep that in mind.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Reno?
In the case of LDC 1700053, the Elm Estate, based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit, subject to conditions, with the modification to condition number 7, to include the west metering of the west property line as well, and then also with data recording in consultation and to the satisfaction of code enforcement. And then condition number 21, no parking will be allowed along West 2nd Street along the south side there, with consultation with the city engineer.
Excellent.
And I can make all the findings.
Thank you. Have a motion? Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weisky, I'll second that. And a comment before, this project truly is an asset to the neighborhood. I was never not in favor of it. I think the discussion tonight was to try and enhance what a good project is for a neighborhood that could use a project like this. And the architect and the owners get some kudos for that. It's coming along very well.
Well said. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Johnson, I do, just as a response, because obviously the finding about the scale and in discussions and in talking about it, I don't disagree with the approach that they've taken. I would strongly encourage as much connectivity with the new development in terms of the site work to try to tie them together. And I do still recommend considering a little bit more brick, just especially to tie those together, maybe getting some on the west elevation as well. But based on the discussion here, I can make that finding in terms of compatibility. So, thank you.
Thank you. Additional discussion? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good luck with your project. Thank you. That'll wrap up our public hearing portion here. We're going to move on to item number 8, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. We had sort of a mini update earlier. We have a meeting scheduled for next week. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Staff announcements.
I don't have anything. Councilwoman Becca's covered everything.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Well, we got our sustainability report, so I'm happy. Commissioner Hawkins. Thank you.
We're going to have some controversial items come up in the next month or two that need to be discussed, and I think HRC could help us out.
So the Historic Resource Commission?
Yes.
Or the
Can I get more-
staff
Can
representative?
I get more clarification on that? Jeff and I are the staff representatives for the HRC.
Oh, you are?
We are. So if that covers it, then I think we're good.
I think we're good.
All right. We'll take care of that. Thank you.
Okay. Other suggestions? Okay. Ask for public comment, open public comment. Seeing none, closing public comment. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.